Genesis chapter 6 says there were giants in the earth in those days. Well, who were these giants? It came to pass when men began to multiply in the face of the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God, which always refers to angels in the Old Testament, saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, his days shall be 120 years. Now, I don't know what that means. If anybody knows, let me know. People have argued, see, nobody's going to live past 120. Well, that's not true. There's a lot of folks who have lived past 120. Some people say it's going to be 120 years till the flood. I don't know. Maybe it means there's going to be 120 Jubilee years of human history. Every 50 years was a year of Jubilee. 120 times 50 is 6,000. I don't know. If you know, let me know, but I don't. But anyway, back to the giants. It says, there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Who were these giants? And is this giants referring to the mighty men? Or does the phrase, after that, separate this into two totally unrelated subjects? I can't figure it out. Somebody knows, please let me know. But the Bible says God saw the wickedness of man and he said, I'm going to wipe them out, and he sent the flood. But who were these giants and who were these mighty men? It's the Hebrew word Nephilim. Who were the Nephilim? Well, some people think that Jude, verse 6, it's only got one chapter, they think Jude, verse 6, ties in. Angels which kept not their first estate. I think that ties in also, but I have no idea why I believe that, other than that's what I've been taught all my life. But I think it's always wise to question and say, well, is this really... Does this tie in? Other people think the Peter passage ties in. 1 Peter says, the spirits in prison waited in the days of Noah. Are these spirits in prison and the angels that kept not their first estate and the giants, is this referring to the same thing? I'm going to give that a definite probably, but I don't know how you could prove such a thing. Here are the theories about these Nephilim. Some people think they're sons of God that are fallen angels that, followed Satan, and they married the daughters of men. The problems with that theory is angels don't marry in heaven. That doesn't mean they can't marry on earth. And it assumes that Revelation 12 means a third of the angels followed Satan. You guys going through Bible college, why do we always teach a third of the angels followed Satan? The passage in Revelation says Satan drew a third of the stars with his tail. That's it. That's the only verse they're using to say a third of the angels followed Satan. There's no question Satan has helpers and demons and all that stuff, but I don't think the Bible tells us. So either we don't need to know, or it just simply doesn't matter. But don't worry about it. There's not enough information. The second theory says it's the sons of God, referring to the line of Seth, and they're marrying the Cain's descendants, intermarrying of the godly and ungodly line. I think that's a ridiculous theory, because saved and unsaved people get married all the time, and it doesn't affect their children as far as they don't become giants, because one's saved and one's lost, okay? Secondly, there's no evidence Seth's children were godly. I mean, they all drowned in the flood too, except for one of them, Noah. Noah had brothers and sisters that drowned in the flood. It says Lamech lived after he begat Noah so many years and begat sons and daughters. Noah's own cousins didn't come on the ark. Brothers and sisters didn't. Chuck Missler's got a good audio tape series about the Nephilim. If you want to read, listen, study more on that. He thinks not only were they, genetic experiments, but they're coming back. And Satan's going to use this again to infiltrate humanity. You can get Chuck Missler's stuff on that. But whatever these Nephilim were, it would appear to me that Noah's kids would have seen them. Genesis 6, the first 5 verses, is taking place just before the flood. And so God said to Noah, build the ark and we're going to have a flood. So this Nephilim is referred to before the flood. So let's assume that they were giant people with supernatural powers of some kind. Noah's kids would have seen them. After the flood's over, they're going to tell stories to their kids sitting around the campfire. Oh, you should have seen the guy that lived down the street from us. Man, oh man, he had 3 eyes and could fly, or who knows, But these stories are going to be preserved through the flood by Noah's children, and they're going to become the legends of Zeus and Thor and all the Babylonian and Greek and all the mythological gods. Probably are actually stretched stories, and maybe even not stretched stories, of true things that happened. So probably this is a result of the Nephilim. But there's an awful lot of stuff about these giants in the earth in those days, and maybe that's what it is. You study it for yourself. Next question. What about UFOs, unidentified flying objects? What are they? I don't know, and I'm not sure how it ties into creation, but since I get asked that every week, I'll tell you my humble, totally unbiased thoughts on the topic, okay? What are the UFOs, unidentified flying objects? I like that picture, you know. Took off his glasses. I have been to New Mexico, to the UFO Museum several times. Every time I go through that area and preach, I stop in and see the UFO Museum. It's pretty interesting. It's a huge place with all kinds of interesting stuff and hundreds of books that have been written about UFOs. Gulf Breeze, right down here, 6 miles away, is famous for its UFO sightings. So, what are the UFOs? There have been many Christian books written on the topic and many heathen books written on the topic. We have these two, UFO, End Time Delusion, and a kind of Reader's Digest smaller version by the same author, condensing the information, UFO 666. There's a great book by Chuck Missler again called Alien Encounters, if you want to read his theory on UFOs. And he's one of the smartest guys I know. I asked Chuck Missler a few months ago when I was preaching out there at a conference with him, I said, Dr. Missler, what really happened at Roswell, New Mexico? What is the truth about this? You know, the UFO crash site. He said, Brother Hovind, I don't know for sure, and nobody who knows is talking, but exactly 9 months later, Al Gore was born. So, what happened? I don't know, that'll preach, but Stan Deyo has a good book. He lives in Colorado Springs. Stan Deyo's book about the cosmic conspiracy is real good on the topic. He says it's using a little understood form of propulsion called electrogravitic propulsion. And I mentioned this in a seminar years ago, and a guy came to me and he said, Brother Hovind, I work for the government, and how do you know about electrogravitic propulsion? That's top secret. I said, I read a book about it. I'm sorry, you know. That's the book if you want to read it. Still available from millennium-arc.net. So, round airplanes have been made for years. This is the XF-5U, which flew very well but during World War II at the end. But they invented jet engines and they kind of became obsolete. Here's the A-15. The Russians had a similar one called the A-16, a round airplane, a frisbee, okay? The V-173 flew just fine. So there are several theories about UFOs. Let me just give them to you. Since I don't know, I'll tell you what you can study for yourself. One theory says they're all misidentified. Somebody saw a weather balloon, swamp gas, a mirage, too much vodka, whatever, okay? Second theory says they're top secret or government or private experiments. The third theory says they're satanic or demonic. See, God is all places. Satan can only be one place. So he flies a UFO according to that third theory. Okay, he has to be able to get around quickly. If they travel with electrogravitic propulsion, then there would be no G-force because every molecule is being drawn electrically. So the craft could go from 0 to 5,000 and stop on a dime, and the people inside would not be bouncing around. No G-force. People describe the UFOs as, you know, up, down, right, left, zip, 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 you know, things that would kill a person inside a regular plane. You know, pilots black out with too much G-force. The fourth theory says they're alien life from other planets. Now, the Bible says Eve's the mother of all living, so I have a hard time believing there's life on other planets. I think there's angels out there, you know, seraphim, cherubim, if you mean life outside of Earth, and that I would agree with. But as far as other, you know, living beings outside of that, I don't believe there's any life anywhere else. Next question. How long were they in the Garden of Eden before they sinned? The Bible says Adam was 130 when a son was born. Before that, Cain and Abel were born, but the dates aren't given because they're not in the line to Jesus Christ. So I think they could have been in the garden 100 years. I don't know, but I don't think they sinned the first 30 seconds. At the end of day 6, God said everything was very good. Adam and Eve had not sinned yet, and Satan had not fallen yet. It's not logical to say Satan fell before the 6th day of creation, because God said everything was very good. But God drove man out and put him at the east of the Garden of Eden and put some angels and cherubims there and says, don't come back. So I don't think they were in the Garden of Eden. They had to be out before Cain and Abel were born and before Seth was born, so it could have been 100 years. There's no way to tell. But certainly sometime after day 7, before 100 years, I'm just picking that as a number, they were in the Garden of Eden. Okay? What about the mark of the beast? We'll cover much more on this on our college class, CSE 200 series, but the Bible says they're going to receive a mark in their right hand or forehead, and you cannot buy or sell without this mark. I have studied this a lot. I'm sure no expert, but I believe we've already got it available today, this little microchip, about the size of a grain of rice, that's been developed for 20 years now. They've been 15 or 20 years they've been using this. Dean Martin, some of you might have been here when Dean lives right here in town, came to speak to our staff about the microchip. He took one of these little chips, put it under his arm, and walked past his laptop computer, which had a little sensor built into it. Are you here for that, Diane? And up on the screen flashed his name, address, phone number, social security number, birth date. The chip doesn't store any of that. The chip stores a code that triggers the computer to find all that. Technology is already here to make a little chip that's just a transponder. A radio frequency goes out, energizes the chip, which has no battery. The antenna picks up the energy and sends back, here's my number. I am number, 325C95, whatever. Exxon gas station, you can buy these called Speed Pass. You walk up, pump your gas, touch the pump, get in your car and drive off. McDonald's is doing this. You carry a little chip on a keychain. You walk up, touch the McDonald's cash register, pay for your food. Anybody ever seen that before? It's been available for 5 or 6 years. Okay? This article came out in CNN. Is human chip implant wave of the future? Years ago, people have been putting chips in themselves to activate their whole house. Kevin Warwick's really big on this. When he walks into the room, the light comes on. His whole house is computerized, and it's all based on a chip that he's got in his arm. So, it can be done. Hitachi Corporation developed a new Mu chip, which only holds 128 bits. But that's the size of it right there. 0.4 millimeters. You can put it inside a piece of paper and not find it. There's a family in Florida a couple years ago who was real proud of themselves. They put microchips in because they have health problems. And in case they get hurt in an accident, they can scan their body and find out, oh, this is George, he's got hemophilia, whatever, There's a little chip there. You can see the antenna, which receives the radio signal. That signal energizes the antenna, which activates it to send back its signal. It gets its energy from an outside source. Well, Carl Sanders has a whole bunch of stuff on this microchip technology. You can get a hold of him in Arkansas if you want. Put his website up here. But as far as using money, the Bible says the love of money, root of all evil. This microchip technology is going to be used to develop one world currency. All cash is going to become obsolete. You're going to have a chip in your hand or in your forehead, or you cannot buy or sell. And we are racing toward that technology, racing toward that reality right now. I don't know how much longer it's going to be, but I'll be surprised if we go 5 more years. Without cash, credit cards, everything being eliminated, you have to have a chip. I don't think there's going to be a grand moment when Christians can stand up and say, you're not giving me that chip, I'm going to go stand up for God. It's just going to be a simple matter of you get slowly choked out of society. Well, you just can't buy here. Okay, sorry, we don't take cash, we don't take credit cards, all we take is, you got to have a chip. It's going to solve a lot of problems and create a lot of problems, which ties in probably to the HAARP technology, High Altitude Aurora Research Project, HAARP. They've been doing research for years, trying to use the aurora, where the northern lights are, to control weather. There's a lot of folks and a lot of stuff on the internet thinking that probably these hurricanes in the last couple of years have been controlled deliberately. By sending up microwave frequencies, they can heat up a section of the sky and make a virtual lens, and then therefore use the sun's light coming through that lens to heat up the ground, like you burn ants with your magnifying glass, High Altitude Aurora Research Project. They can make a virtual mirror with this stuff. How much is real? I don't know. It's an interesting study. They use ELF, extra low frequency, and you can get into all that if you'd like. There's been a ton of research done on this, and there's a lot of strange things up in Alaska and up around the North Pole that apparently are for this purpose. They drill a hole in the ground. Everything seems to be below ground, probably for multiple reasons. That means, if anybody knows, let me know. People have argued, see, nobody's going to live past 120. Well, that's not true. There's a lot of folks who have lived past 120. Some people say it's going to be 120 years till the flood. I don't know. Maybe it means there's going to be 120 Jubilee years of human history. Every 50 years was a year of Jubilee. 120 times 50 is 6,000. I don't know. If you know, let me know, but I don't. I can't figure it out. Somebody knows, please let me know. But the Bible says God saw the wickedness of man and he said, I'm going to wipe them out, and he sent the flood. But who were these giants and who were these mighty men? It's the Hebrew word Nephilim. Who were the Nephilim? Well, some people think that Jude, verse 6, it's only got one chapter, they think Jude, verse 6, ties in. Angels which kept not their first estate. I think, but anyway, back to the giants. It says, there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Who were these giants? And is this giants referring to the mighty men? Or does the phrase, after that, separate this into two totally unrelated subjects? That ties in also, but I have no idea why I believe that, other than that's what I've been taught all my life. But I think it's always wise to question and say, well, is this really, does this tie in? Other people think the Peter passage ties in. 1 Peter says, the spirits in prison waited in the days of Noah. Are these spirits in prison and the angels that... Genesis chapter 6 says there were giants in the earth in those days. Well, who were these giants? It came to pass when men began to multiply in the face of the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God, which always refers to angels in the Old Testament, saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, his days shall be 120 years. And I don't know what that